Hi everyone, my name is Matt and welcome to my channel. It's been a while since we painted some Tyranids here. One of my favorite Warhammer illustrations is the 3rd edition Tyranid Codex cover by Adrian Smith, and we also received a couple requests for an army painting guide in that color scheme. So let's grab our brushes and get started. I started off by priming the model with a light gray primer. This one happens to be a very close color match to the Citadel layer paint Dawnstone. If you don't have access to this primer, I would recommend starting with a white primer and then airbrush your model with Dawnstone. For the first layer I painted Basilicanum gray all over. When working with contrast paints I like to work on one section at a time and apply plenty of paint so it flows into all the recesses. Then I'll use the brush to soak up any excess paint as needed. I'm trying to avoid painting the gun if I can, since that will make the base coat easier in the next step, but if some paint gets on it, that's okay. Next I painted the face, neck, and gun with Rakarth flesh. I'd like to keep some of the deep shadows on the head and neck, so I painted that with a kind of dry brush technique. Rather than wipe all the paint off the brush, I dragged the wet brush over the raised edges. Once that dried, I painted a second coat for a more even finish. In the illustration, the Tyranids' heads have a red pattern on them, and I painted that with Mephiston red. I'd like to think the pattern is unique on each model, so paint as much or as little of this color as you like. There are also some red patterns on the scales and limbs, and I thinned the Mephiston red with 1 or 2 parts water, and I painted a sort of glaze dry brush. With very little paint on the brush, rub it anywhere you'd like to start building up the red color. After the paint dries, go back and add another layer, and then repeat until you're happy with the results. I decided to try and simplify the patterns a little bit from the illustration. I painted a stripe along the center of the scales and along the elbow joints. I also painted the claws and hooves with a solid coat of red. Then I painted the tongue with turquoise. I went back to the Rakarth flesh and picked out the joints on the limbs. I'd like the skin to have a warmer look, so I shaded everything except for the scales with Targor Rageshade. I'd like the scales to have a slightly cooler and darker look, so after the skin shade dried, I painted the scales with a layer of Basilicanum gray. I also shaded the teeth and the mouth with the gray. I'd like a little more shading on the back of the head and neck, so I added some there as well, and I blended out the edge by rinsing the brush and wiping the clean brush along the edge of the wet paint. Next I added some color to the gun and the face with Magos purple. You could paint the whole gun if you'd like, but I decided to just paint the end of it, and I blended out the paint by rinsing the brush, wiping it on a paper towel, and then I ran the clean brush along the edge of the wet paint. Now is a great time for me to ask you to do those YouTube things that we all love so much. If you're liking the video so far, please give it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any future content. If you really like what I'm doing here and want to support the channel further, consider being a channel member. We have some perks including a Discord server and early access to videos. I painted the eyes and the other details with toxic yellow. And then I shaded them with Nazdreg yellow. I picked out the teeth with Offwhite. At this stage you could call the model finished, but I'd like to add a few highlights, so let's keep going. First I'd like to highlight the skin with a soft glaze of Stormvermin fur. I thinned the paint slightly with water and painted the top facing sections of the limbs. I'm not going to go too crazy with the highlights, and you could omit them completely if you want to. I painted one more highlight with a mix of Stormvermin fur and Rakarth flesh, and I painted it on the shoulders. I want the scales to look dark, and having a lighter tone on the skin right next to them will help them look darker. Next I highlighted the center portion of the gun and part of the face with Rakarth flesh. I tried to fade out the highlights into the purple areas. I'll highlight those parts with pink next. Then I highlighted the purple areas of the gun with a light pink. Next I highlighted some of the red areas with Evil Sunz Scarlet. Since I'm trying to design this color scheme for army painting, I think it would be too time consuming to highlight all the red, so instead I'll highlight the areas I think will have the most impact. I think the claws, tail, back scales, and the face are the most important. I highlighted the red areas one more time with Fire Dragon, focusing on the sharpest edges and corners. I highlighted the edge of the tongue with Baharoth blue. There are a couple spikes on the gun that I forgot about, and I painted those with black. Finally, I highlighted the edges of the scales with Dawnstone. I want the scales to look pretty dark, so I tried to keep the highlights narrow, small, and reserved for the sharpest edges and corners. I used an old brush to apply textured paste to the base, and before that dried, I sprinkled on some coarse gravel and fine sand. After the base dried, I painted it with a layer of thinned Rhinox hide, followed by a dry brush of Steel Legion Drab. I painted the rocks with Dawnstone, and then shaded them with an equal parts mix of Agrax Earthshade and Nuln oil. I painted the edge of the base black, and after that dried, I applied patches of static grass with superglue. I'd like to give a big shout out to our channel members. Thank you so much for your support. It really is a huge help. If you want to be like these amazing people and help support what I'm doing here, just click the join button down below. Thank you. I really enjoyed painting a couple Tyranids again. It's been too long. I think this color scheme has a lot more to explore, especially in different patterns and markings. I made the red a little different on this one, and maybe each model in the army could be unique in that way, either on the head or different red markings on the scales. What do you think? Should each model in an army have some individuality, or should they all look the same? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and until next time, happy painting.